Knights of Gogonia is a strategic kingdom-building board game that combines resource management, territorial control, questing, and combat. Players develop unique kingdoms through an innovative kingdom trait system, allowing every ruler to pursue a different path to victory. Fans of Risk and Catan will find familiar elements of expansion and resource management, while discovering deeper customization and strategic variety in the struggle to become the ruler of Gogonia. The base game has 2 expansions available to it. However, in this video, we're only going to be going over the setup and basic play of the base game. Step number 1 in the setup is to build the game board. You'll select the number of terrain tiles required for the number of players chosen to play. Every game will start with the Grand Market tile in the center. If you're playing with 2 players, you will start with the Grand Market tile in the center, and then you'll use the 2-player terrain tiles to form 2 hexagon rings around the Grand Market. If you're playing with 3 players, you'll add an additional hexagon ring using the 3-player terrain tiles, and if you're playing with 4 players, you'll add an additional ring with the 4-player terrain tiles. These are the sacked village tiles. They're not used during the setup to build the game board, but they will be used later on during the game, so I'll place them nearby. I'm also going to slide off the 3-player and 4-player terrain tiles, and I'm going to start by flipping over my Grand Market and using the 2-player terrain tiles to form 2 hexagon rings around the Grand Market. You can do this randomly, or you can select where you'd like to place these tiles for a more personalized setup. After I've completed the game board for 2 players, if I'm playing with 3 players, I'll use the 3-player terrain tiles to build a 3rd hexagon ring. And if I'm playing with 4 players, I will use the 4-player terrain tiles to build the 4th hexagon ring to finish building the game board. While the random tile placement can make each game unique and challenging, it is recommended that each village tile is adjacent to at least 2 resource tiles, and each outer edge of the final game board contains at least 2 resource tiles that a kingdom tile may later connect to during setup. For the rest of this video, I'm going to be demonstrating how to play with 3 players, so I've decreased the size of our game board back down to a 3-player game board. And since we're playing with a 3-player game board, we won't be using one of the villages in the 4-player terrain tiles. So I like to take a moment to match the sacked village tiles to those that I have on my game board. I'll take those and I'll place those next to the game board so they're readily available when I need them. I wanted to take a moment to help you identify an unfavorable setup as I've done here in this game. Notice this village up top here, it is not adjacent to any resources, making it very undesirable during this game. So I can shift my tiles around so that I can move it down here so that it is adjacent to both stone and wood. This is a much more desirable setup. In step number 2 of the setup, the players will choose their color. In the base game, they have the options of these 4 colors here, and each player will select their player color, collect their kingdom tile, the 5 kingdom trait markers, 7 knights, and 8 outpost stronghold tokens of that color. In this game, we're going to go with green, red, and blue. In step number 3 of the setup, players are going to select their monarch and player board. Now, there are 4 kings and 4 queens to choose from in the base game. Each monarch comes with a different special ability that tailors to different players' play style. Any special ability that adjusts the kingdom trait level will already be adjusted in the kingdom traits. Not only adjusted that kingdom trait's start value, but also its end value. You'll also notice the infamy is marked red as it is negative victory points at the end of the game, except for King Hugh, whose special ability allows him to score his infamy as positive victory points at the end of the game. While the rulebook says to deal 2 random player boards to each player and allow each player to choose one of those player boards, you can also personalize your setup and allow players to select their monarch that matches their play style. In this game, we're going to play with King Robert, Queen Eleanor, and Queen Alice. After selecting their monarch and player board, the second part of step 3 has each player set their level markers for attack strength, defense strength, and benevolence, and trade ratio at the starting levels. These are highlighted in green for easier setup. Note that players do not start with an infamy level marked, but they should have their infamy level marker placed next to their player board. While I'll go into more detail about the quest cards and the resource cards later in this video, in step number 4 of the setup, you are to shuffle the quest cards and randomly deal 2 cards to each player. You also are to shuffle the resource cards and randomly deal 1 resource card to each player. Then take the remaining quest cards and the remaining resource cards and place them near the supply next to the game board to have a draw pile for each of them to use later in the game. In step number 5 of the setup, we will determine the placement and turn order. Each player will roll 2 dice and add the result to determine the placement order and turn order. The player who rolls the highest sum may select either to be the first player to place their kingdom tile or be the player to take the first turn. In our game here, the green player rolled the largest sum of a 5, and therefore they have chosen to be the first player to place their kingdom tile, as they desired to place their kingdom tile adjacent to the gold mine and iron mine on the left side of the board. This means that the blue player, who was to the right of the green player, will be the second player to place their kingdom tile, and they have chosen to place their kingdom tile adjacent to the right side of the board near both a village and a mountain, but away from the marsh. And finally, the red player gets to place their kingdom tile, which they've chosen to place it adjacent to the top part of the board, near a village, which grants them access to stone through the adjacent mountain, and near a forest. Now that the kingdom tiles are placed, players can place their knights on the kingdom tiles, and we move to step 7 of the setup, where we will place our starting outposts. Each player will place outpost tokens on any 2 of the 3 terrain tiles adjacent to their kingdom tile. Players will now own these terrain tiles, so it is to their benefit to select resource or village tiles, but they may choose any 2 of the 3 adjacent tiles. The last step of our setup is step 8, where players will gain their starting resources. Players will collect 4 gold, 4 wood, and 2 stone, as well as 2 resources from the supply for each of the resource tiles they now own with the outposts they placed. If the player owns a village, they may choose 2 resources from any of the resources available at that village. You have now completed the setup and you are ready to play the game. The turn order for the game will follow the reverse order of the kingdom tile placement. So for our game, the red player will play first, followed by the blue player, and then the green player. During each round, each player will take their turn in full, whereby they will collect resources, take up to 4 actions, draw 2 quest cards, and then enforce the resource limit. After completing these 4 steps, the player's turn ends and the next player begins their turn. Once all players have taken their turn, the round is over and the next round begins. To collect resources at the start of a player's turn, they will identify any resource tiles or villages that they own with an outpost or stronghold. They will collect 1 resource from the supply for each resource tile or village they own with an outpost. Resources taken from the village must be available resources. They will collect 2 resources from the supply for each resource tile and village they own with a stronghold. Resources again taken from the village must be available resources. They may take 2 of the same resource from the village or 2 different resources if available. During a player's turn, after they've collected their resources, they have the opportunity to complete up to 4 of the following actions. Some monarch abilities, resource cards, or quest cards can increase the number of actions a player may take on their turn. As one action, players may move any number of knights that occupy the same terrain tile or kingdom tile to an adjacent terrain tile. Additionally, if knights occupy an owned terrain tile, they may be moved through any number of adjacent owned terrain tiles for only 2 actions. Something to make note of when moving your knights is that unowned gold mine, iron mine, mountain, and marsh tiles are considered difficult terrain and are marked with the difficult terrain icon in the bottom right corner of the tile. Any knight that moves into an unowned difficult terrain tile cannot be moved again until the player's next turn. This means the knights cannot be used to attack during the same turn. Once a player owns a difficult terrain tile by building an outpost or stronghold, that terrain tile is no longer considered difficult terrain for that player. The player who owns the tile may grant other players permission to move through the terrain tile as if it were not difficult terrain. As one action, a player mines from a resource tile they own or occupy. The player will collect 1 resource if they occupy the resource tile with 1 or more knights, plus 1 resource if they own the tile with an outpost, or 2 resources if they own the tile with a stronghold. For just one action, a player makes as many of the following types of trades, provided all trades are completed consecutively without performing any other actions in between. Players may make any agreed-upon trade with another player regardless of their trade ratio. For example, if I had 4 wood that I wanted to get rid of, I could trade it to another player for 2 stone and 1 iron. All trades with the supply are set by the player's trade ratio. A player's trade ratio determines the number of a single resource that must be traded away to receive 1 resource from the supply. Each player's trade ratio is recorded on their player board. The trade ratio begins at 4 to 1 and is decreased by the player's benevolence or increased by the player's infamy. The trade ratio can also be adjusted by playing resource cards or completing quests, but the trade ratio cannot be greater than 5 to 1 nor less than 1 to 1. If a player occupies a village, they may use their trade ratio to obtain a resource from the supply, provided the resource received is available at that village. In this example, the blue player occupies a village adjacent to a mountain, and they would like to spend 1 action to trade 4 wood for 1 stone. If the player owns the village, they may use their trade ratio -1 to obtain a resource from the supply. So in this example, now that blue owns the village with an outpost, they only need to trade away 3 wood to obtain 1 stone. If the player occupies the grand market, they may use their trade ratio to obtain any resource from the supply, or gold may be traded away at a ratio of 1 to 1. As 1 action, a player who occupies or owns a village or occupies the grand market may buy a resource card by paying 4 of any resources to the supply. The 4 resources do not need to be of the same type. If the player occupies or owns a village when completing this action, they simply draw the top resource card from the draw pile. However, if the player occupies the grand market when completing this action, they may draw the top 2 cards from the resource draw pile and decide which one to keep and which one to discard without resolving. As 1 action, a player may pay to increase any of the kingdom traits they'd like, provided all the increases are completed consecutively without performing any other actions in between. The cost to increase each kingdom trait can be seen both on the player board beneath each kingdom trait or in the rulebook. As 1 action, a player may pay 2 wood and 1 stone to build an outpost on any unowned terrain tile that they occupy, with the exception of the grand market. As 1 action, a player pays 1 wood, 2 stone, and 2 iron to upgrade one of their outposts to a stronghold. A knight does not need to occupy the terrain tile where the stronghold is to be built, since the terrain tile is already owned by the player. The final type of action a player may choose to do on their turn is to attack. A player can choose to attack any terrain tile they occupy, or any terrain tile adjacent to a terrain tile they occupy. Attacking an unowned village will sack the village, replacing it with a sacked village tile, meaning that it no longer has any available resources, and the player's infamy will increase by 1, but they will gain 4 resources for each adjacent resource tile. Attacking the grand market does not sack the grand market, but it does increase the player's infamy by 2. However, as a reward for a successful attack, the attacking player collects 4 of each resource from the supply, plus additional resources of their choice equal to the difference between the attack and defense scores. As an additional bonus, the attacking player's resource limit is suspended until the end of their next turn. It is important to note that if another player occupies a village or the grand market when it is attacked, they may choose to roll 1 die per occupying knight to add to the defense score. This will increase their benevolence and perhaps prevent the attacking player from being successful. A player may attack the knights of any other players on any unowned terrain tile in an attempt to send them back to their kingdom tile if successful. A player may also attack another player's outpost or stronghold. This attack would also target any knights occupying the target terrain tile. If successful, all the occupying knights would be removed as well as the outpost or stronghold. A player could also declare that they're going to reserve 1 action to join another player in a cooperative attack. This allows them to join their forces, giving them a greater chance of success against a difficult enemy. Please refer to the rulebook for more details and examples about each of the attack scenarios just described. While each attack scenario can vary with slight changes to the way the attack and defense scores are calculated or the actions taken to resolve the attack, each attack will follow these basic steps. The attacking player or players would declare what they're attacking. This would include the target terrain tile and what is being attacked on that terrain tile. This would also include declaring the knights they will use in the attack. Following that, the defense is declared, which would automatically include the player being attacked and would include any of their knights, outposts, or strongholds on the target terrain tile. However, in certain attack scenarios, players who are not being attacked yet occupy the target terrain tile may choose to join the defense. These players must declare their intent to join the defense after the attacking player declares their attack, but before the attack dice are rolled. The attacking player then rolls one attack dice for each attacking knight, and they add the results of their dice to their attack strength to calculate their total attack score. If they're attacking from a stronghold or their kingdom tile, their defense score is also added to their attack score. Then the defending knights would roll the defense dice and add the sum to the base defense score. The base defense score does vary by scenario, so please refer to the rulebook for more details. Then you would compare the attack and defense scores to determine the victor. As with any close combat, if the sides were a close match, the victor would still suffer losses. Therefore, if the winning side's total score exceeds the losing side's total score by only 1 or 2 points, each player of the winning side must roll one die and remove that many of their knights used in combat. The player must send the number of knights equal to the result of this roll back to their kingdom tile. Then you resolve the tile control, consequences, and rewards. The ramifications for each attack scenario differ and should be followed in this step. However, you'll need to refer to the rulebook for specific details and examples, or any resource or quest cards that may affect that. However, there are some basic rules for all knights involved in combat. If a knight loses in combat, they must be removed and returned to their kingdom tile. If a knight is victorious in combat, they must be moved to occupy the target terrain tile. Finally, the attacking players would each draw one resource card for a successful attack. If the attack is not successful, no resource card is drawn at this time. Each resource card is color-coded and labeled to help players better understand the benefits of that card and what aspect of the game it would impact. The usage scroll at the bottom of each resource card explains when a player may use the card. After a player has completed their actions on their turn, they will draw 2 quest cards from the quest card draw pile. Players may only hold a maximum of 3 uncompleted quest cards. After drawing, players choose which quest cards to keep, if any, and discard the rest before the next player's turn. Players may exchange quest cards already in their hand with newly drawn quest cards. Some quests require multiple actions to complete the objective, like the Warlord. For these quests, collect the number of quest tracker tokens needed from the supply, place them X side up. Each time you complete the objective, flip one quest tracker token over to the check side. When the final objective is met, reveal the quest and gain its reward immediately. The end of the game occurs when one player has 6 strongholds at the end of their turn. Once this condition has been met, the final round begins, where each player gets one final turn, starting with the next player in turn order and concluding with the player who triggered the end of the game. During this final round, the game will still end even if the player with 6 strongholds is attacked and loses a stronghold. Once the game is ended, the players calculate their victory points from each of the following game aspects. Each of the following can be adjusted by monarch abilities, completed quests, and resource cards that modify how an item is scored. Any play when scoring resource cards should be played at this time. After all the players have added up their total victory points, the player with the most victory points is declared the winner and true monarch of Gogonia.